Why do Korean knitting patterns feel so perfect for spring? Is it the delicate lace or the softer silhouettes, or maybe the way they are designed for layering? After researching Korean knitwear designers and looking at dozens and dozens of designs, I started noticing clear patterns, and today I want to walk you through them. I have selected 11 pieces that show exactly what makes Korean knitting patterns so perfectly suited for spring. Starting with one of the most beautiful spring cardigans I've seen in a long time. The Acacia leaf cardigan by Sedna Young perfectly captures the playful elegance that I associate with Korean knitting. Instead of relying on cables or heavy, bulky textures, this botanical motif almost looks like it's growing across the fabric. And that's something I see often in Korean knitting. Knitted pieces that feel organic rather than bold or architectural. If I imagine this in a spring wardrobe, I can see it layered over a simple cotton or linen dress, or even worn open with high-waisted trousers and a silk blouse underneath. And since it's knitted with a light fingering weight yarn, it is lightweight enough for those in-between days when it's too warm for a heavy sweater but still too cool for bare arms. It is designed to be effortlessly layered, and this already hints at one of the core themes we are going to see again and again throughout this video: layering without bulk. Now, if you've watched my first video about Korean knitting, you might remember Sedna Young and her stunning BARAM shawl. BARAM means wind, and I think if you look at this design, you immediately understand her thorough and thoughtful approach to designs in general. If you would like to know more about this shawl, I am going to link the video for you in the description box below. But for now, let's stay with garments. La Tulipe is French and means tulip, and this design feels so elegant, light and airy, and I think that's why it is so perfectly suited for spring. The silhouette is clean and relaxed, and there's nothing overly dramatic about it, but the stunning all-over lace pattern is a true showstopper. And this is something I've noticed about many Korean patterns. They don't rely on heavy cables or dense textures to make a statement. Instead, they focus on drape, elegant stitch patterns, and often lightweight yarns. The sample is knitted with 2 strands of a silk mohair yarn held together, which I think suits the pattern extremely well, but I can also imagine that this piece would look stunning with a fingering weight silk yarn or maybe some kind of an alpaca blend. Any yarn that would give it that beautiful drape. Style-wise, I can very well imagine it paired with, some wide leg trousers or maybe a skirt. And I think with these combinations, you would easily be able to create an everyday outfit that looks very put together and intentional. Slipovers are such great transitional pieces, and I think Korean knitwear designers understand these principles of layering extremely well. Instead of designing mainly winter sweaters, they design for seasonal shifts. The Athens slipover by Manmi Choi is a perfect example because it is clearly designed to be layered and not as a standalone piece. Instead, it adds dimension to an outfit. Just imagine it over a crisp white blouse, a dress, or even layered over another lightweight knit. It allows you to build warmth gradually without committing to a full sweater. And structurally, that makes it ideal for spring, when the temperatures shift throughout the day. There is something very practical about this design philosophy. It simply acknowledges real life, and I really love that. This is exactly the type of Korean spring knit that makes you understand the title of this video. This beautiful design has this gorgeous all-over lace pattern, but it is paired with a classic, rather minimal shape, and I think that's why it creates this very elevated look of a more everyday top It looks very polished, and it certainly can be a showstopper piece if you want to wear it like that, but I think you could also very well just use it as an everyday piece and just look a bit more elevated and polished when wearing it. What I really love here is how the texture is what stands out. The stitch pattern creates movement and lightness without needing bold shaping, and because it's knit in a lighter yarn weight, it naturally lends itself to spring fibers. I could really see this looking stunning in a linen blend for that crisp, breathable feel, for example. Styling wise, I think this is so easy to imagine. High-waisted jeans like in the photos, or maybe a flowy skirt for a slightly more polished look. And it's also one of those pieces that works across temperatures. You can wear it on its own on a warmer day, or throw a cardigan over it, or wear a simple long sleeve under it when it cools down. It just adapts, and I think this adaptability is what makes it so perfectly suited for spring. It is just not locked into one function. Next up we have the Neige sweater by Onel Knit. And Neige means snow, that's a French word, and Onel means today. This is of course Korean. I feel like the Neige sweater is a perfect example of another very spring appropriate pattern. We see more lace here, but this time only on the yoke area, which naturally draws the eye upward. And the rest of the top is knitted in simple stockinette stitch, which creates a nice contrast that I really like. I noticed that Korean patterns often concentrate on details in specific areas, and that focused detailing keeps the pieces so refined. What makes this one especially spring ready is the silhouette, I think. The shorter sleeves instantly shifted out of winter territory, and it feels very transitional, so perfect for those days when you want coverage but not heaviness. Because the yarn is held together to create a DK weight fabric, it has that slightly airy halo and drape that keeps it from feeling dense. I imagine this in a soft neutral, something creamy like in the sample, or light gray, or maybe a soft pink, and then paired with simple jeans or even tucked loosely into a skirt. It feels polished but still relaxed, and again we see one of the core Korean principles that I've talked about. Instead of relying on bulk or heavy textures, this design relies on subtle detailing to make it stand out. It feels elegant and sophisticated and just perfectly suited for spring. Here we have another French name, and bonbon means candy in French, and I think this design shows us very well how Korean designers think about femininity. At first glance this looks very light and airy. It also has this lace pattern with the eyelet panels that are running across the cardigan. But I think what also makes it so spring appropriate are the short sleeves as well as the cropped and relaxed fit. It doesn't feel like a winter cardigan that is adapted for the warmer weather. It feels designed specifically for this season. The suggested yarn is a sport weight cotton blend, which already tells you something about the intention behind this piece. Cotton-based yarns tend to hold stitch definition beautifully, so that eyelet texture feels crisp and breathable. And visually, the lace edging along the front and the hemline adds just enough softness without making the garment overly ornate. I imagine this layered over a simple tank top or camisole, paired with a high-waisted skirt, exactly like in the pictures, or even worn open over a summer dress in early spring. It feels like the kind of piece you'd throw on when you just want a hint of warmth without covering everything up. It is romantic, but still grounded and wearable. And I think this is a perfect example for a bridging garment that works so nicely as a transitional piece between cooler and warmer days. Now, at this point, this is where Korean knitting starts to expand our thinking about a handmade wardrobe, because it's not just all about sweaters and cardigans. The next pattern I would like to talk about is a skirt. Now, in many designer portfolios, a knit skirt is very rare or feels extremely niche, but looking at this beautiful piece, I think you can very easily tell that this is such an intentional design that feels both classic and modern at the same time. It's lightweight enough to move beautifully and structured enough to hold its shape. And in spring, paired with a simple button-up shirt like you can see in the pictures, or maybe a silk blouse, it creates an entire cohesive look. This isn't just about knitting garments, it's about thinking about how to put together an outfit. And that mindset shift feels very Korean to me. I actually already featured the Charlotte skirt in my previous video about Korean knitting, but I decided to show it to you again because I think it is just such a unique and beautiful piece and just feels so perfect for spring. The Jasmine Blouse by Hyunji Chin feels slightly different than the other pieces we already had a look at, and that's exactly why I wanted to include it. At first glance, it looks rather minimalistic. It has those clean lines, soft structure, it is sleeveless, but once you start looking a bit closer, you see those subtle details that easily elevate it beyond a simple knit top. The higher neckline gives it that very refined, almost polished look. It's a piece that I could easily see being worn on a dinner date or maybe even a more formal setting. But at the same time, it's still unmistakably knitwear. And I find that contrast really interesting because in many knitting patterns, sleeveless pieces tend to feel either very casual or very summery. But this one sits somewhere in between. It's transitional and it feels intentional. The recommended yarns like airy wool or alpaca blends suggest that the fabric likely has a soft drape and a slight halo. So even though it's a worsted weight, it doesn't necessarily read as heavy. It probably feels light and breathable rather than dense. And styling-wise, this is incredibly versatile. Tucked into a high-waisted skirt, it would look very elegant and put together. Paired with loose trousers, it becomes minimal and more modern. And layered under a light jacket, it transitions effortlessly into cooler spring evenings. And what I especially love is the small button detail at the back neckline. That tiny finishing touch adds refinement without overwhelming the design. This blouse really embodies the Korean design principle we've been talking about. No bulk, no excess, but quiet sophistication. It almost feels like ready-to-wear fashion, and I think this makes it so perfectly suited for a handmade spring wardrobe. And if you're not ready to commit to a full garment this season, Korean knitwear designers also create smaller pieces that still carry the same aesthetic design philosophy. The Topaz Socks by Sangmi Ji aren't just practical, they are really refined. The all-over lace motif is thoughtful and delicate, and the socks are knitted from the calf down and feature a short row heel. For someone who isn't ready to commit to a full sweater this season, a pair of socks can still bring that Korean aesthetic into your knitting. It's a small entry point, but still part of the same visual language. The Tiny Bows fingerless mitts are a design by Sangmi Ji as well, and I think they are very charming, but again, not excessive. The bow detail is subtle and integrated into the design rather than dominating it, and that's what keeps it elegant. For early spring days, when there's still a slight chill, fingerless mitts feel very practical, but they can also be beautiful. This pattern proves that small accessories don't have to feel like afterthoughts. And since we're talking about spring appropriate patterns, I also wanted to show you a type of neck accessory, and I picked the Sweet Stripe Shawl by Manmi Choi. A shawl like this isn't about warmth in the traditional sense. It's more about adding a little bit of layering on these chilly spring mornings or evenings. It features this beautiful lace pattern and bobble stitches and is knitted from tip to tip. It can either be draped loosely over the shoulders or wrapped casually around the neck. And it's also the kind of piece that finishes an outfit without overwhelming it. And that brings us back to the central idea. Korean knitting patterns feel so perfect for spring because they combine lightness, layering, refinement, and versatility. And once you start noticing these design principles, I think it becomes perfectly clear why Korean knitting patterns are so great for spring. It's not about the yarn weight per se, but it's about intention. And I think that is what makes Korean knitting so inspiring. Now, if you've been wondering what I have been wearing in this video, let me give you a closer look because I am so proud of this piece. It took me a long time to knit, but I am so happy that I finished it. And I'll talk to you soon. Until then, happy knitting. Bye.